This is the Stonecoast Alumni Reading Series Part 2 for 2021. So we have 5 amazing authors with us tonight who have published books this year. And last week we had 4 other wonderful authors who also have published books this year. So we have 9 that we're celebrating. There's actually another one in the crowd, Christine Tierney. She told me not to shout her out, but I'm going to, because she also published a book this year, and we're really excited about that as well. But congratulations to all of you, and thank you so much for coming to read for us tonight. My name is Jenny O'Connell, and I am a Stonecoast alum as well. I graduated in 2017 in creative nonfiction, and I'm joined here tonight by my co-host, Troy. I'm going to let Troy Myers introduce himself.
Fun. Thank you, Jenny. My name is Troy Myers. I graduated in 2015 with a degree in poetry. And I got this gig through sheer luck last January during COVID. A classmate and I, Amanda Plow, started a Sunday night reading series for Stonecoast alumni called Stonehouse Readers Series. And we've had faculty, special guests, a lot of alumni read. You're all invited to read. Some of you have read for us. I look forward to seeing you, and I'm just really honored to be here. Thanks, Jenny.
Great, thank you. There are a few other folks that we should call into the room. Hi, Justin. Justin, the Stonecoast Program Director, is here.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah, you want to say hello?
I do. I want to say hi to everyone. I want to just acknowledge the fact that while I am lucky enough to be directing the program now with Robin, the Stonecoast community is bigger than that program itself. It's a thing that you guys create all the time. You guys create it when you sit alone, thanklessly at your desks, and when you bang your head against your laptops, and also when you gather like this to share work and to talk about work and to support one another. So I'm really so honored that I'm part of this community, and it's great to see you all here. And I'm looking forward to hearing the reading tonight. Thanks.
Lovely. And then the last person I wanted to introduce is Kelly. Kelly is our official bookseller of the Stonecoast Alumni Reading Series. And she, at the end, will pop back in to let us know how we can buy these awesome books. But Kelly, you want to say hello real quick, just so we all can see you?
Hey, everybody. It's all nice to see you again. As you know, I've known all of you from the very beginning, and you've all seen me. So even though my hair is longer now, I haven't been able to have a decent haircut in a year and a half. It's okay. I'm so glad to see you and to hear you tonight. And at the end, I'll tell you all the different ways you can get your books from me, which are here in my house and ready to rock and roll out to wherever you might want them. Okay, great.
Woo! Thanks, Kelly. So this is our final event of the year. Stonecoast, when the pandemic hit in 2020, we pivoted into some online programming. And so we've done over the last 2 years, a wide range of programming. Some of it has been through our Stonecoast WISE program, which is writing for inclusivity and social equity. And so we've done programming based on addressing the problems or the issues that we're facing in our society and in this world. So we've had environmental writing with Rick Bass. We've had decolonializing travel writing with Faith Adile and Bonnie and Moor. We've had a whole smattering of events, both in person and remote, that kind of are aimed at giving our literary community the tools to address the problems that they see in the world. The other thing we've done is an alumni-led kind of business of writing series. And that's been really interesting, where we're all out in the field doing this work, striving and trying. And so it's where people have the chance to kind of share wisdom that they've gleaned from the field. So we've had that as well. And then, of course, as Troy mentioned, the Stonehouse Reader Series came up during the pandemic as well, which is a weekly reading series where people, Stonecoast alums and faculty, come in and read their work for an audience. And it's just delightful. It's been a really lovely tradition to kind of get those voices out and to keep joining in community and celebrating. So thank you, Troy. And Amanda, who's not here tonight, but Amanda Plow is also his co-host and co-conspirator for that. So thank you both. I am going to jump right in by introducing our first reader. So Gina Troisi is the author of the memoir, The Angle of Flickering Light, which received a 2021 Silver Medal for the Reader's Favorite Awards and an honorable mention for the 2021 Paris Book Festival Award. She was nominated for a Pushcart Prize in 2020, and we are so happy to see her here. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you, Troy, and thank you, Justin. This is just amazing that you guys are doing this for all of us. So I'm so happy to be here. So I'm just going to read from the beginning of the memoir. And as Jenny said, it's called The Angle of Flickering Light. It was published earlier this year. And the first chapter is called Left Behind. At 5 years old, I sat Indian style on the foot of my father's bed, alone in his new condo. I'd gathered his ballpoint pens from the desk in the corner and began assessing the pictures of women adorning the pens. They wore spiked high heels and bright colored leotards and bikinis and blue sequined triangular tops that reminded me of my older sister's dance recital costumes. Their miniature figures pronounced behind sparkles and strings, their bodies splayed into decorative shapes. I tipped them upside down and their sparse garments fell off. They were proportioned women with hardened pink nipples and clumps of dark hair between their legs. I clothed and unclothed them with the flick of my wrist, turned them upside down, then right side up again. They were grown up like my mother, whom my father had just left. I was mesmerized by these ladies, by their full, buoyant breasts, by the inner curves of thighs that made a hollowed out space for their private parts to breathe. I lay down, watching their clothes fall piece by piece, nestling myself into the cushion of the king-sized bed. The ladies made me think not only of my mother, but also of the faceless women my father rambled on about while out to eat at our favorite Italian restaurant. My sisters and I sat silent, letting him reiterate that Brenda, his secretary, who'd quickly become his girlfriend, had nothing to do with my parents' impending divorce, that he'd been cheating on my mother for years with all kinds of women, including prostitutes. Your mother just didn't want to admit it. She kept her head in the sand. Remember her friend Marla? Marla had lived with us for a while when she needed a place to stay in between moves. I slept with her too. We had an affair for 2 years while your mother and I were together. Ask her. When we arrived home from dinner crying, we gathered in my oldest sister's room. My mother came in to find us sitting on the bed. What happened? She asked. Krista was 12, so she did most of the talking. He said he's been cheating on you for years, that you knew, that every time he went on a business trip, it was never for business. While my mother listened, I kneeled behind Krista and began to pop the cysts on her back. I worked around the straps of her tank top, performing a job I always volunteered for since she couldn't reach. My sisters talked fast, repeated my father's words, the gestures he'd made, how he acted as if we must have known about his mistresses all along. I concentrated on squeezing, on trying to find the pointed heads on the bumps of her skin. Harder, she usually said, until all the pus comes out, until they start bleeding. But today, she didn't tell me what to do, just waited for my mother's response. I can't believe he told you those things, my mother said. She looked at the orange walls, the baskets of necklaces made of white seashells and gold nuggets, stacks of teen magazine and Prince's first albums on cassette tapes. She stood there with a blank look in her eyes, the face of someone who no longer recognized her house or her daughter's bedroom. I waited for the yellowish cream, held a tissue to catch a glob when it emerged, then the speck of blood. I chimed in. He said he's been having affairs since the 70s. My mother seemed shocked and her lip quivered as if she didn't know what else to say. She made no indication that my father's statements weren't true. She only said, "He never should have told you any of that." I liked that I was good at this job, maneuvering these small red mounds, judging when to squeeze harder and when to ease up. I had no worries about scars, since no one would be able to see them. And I felt a kind of satisfaction when the sticky fluid appeared, like the purging of something, but I didn't know what. I thought of when my father lived here with us, in this brown house on a cul-de-sac, where I built snow igloos and plucked frogs from ponds with the neighborhood kids. His blaring records in the living room, John Denver's "You Fill Up My Senses," and Cat Stevens' "Morning Has Broken." His teaching me how to scramble cheese and black pepper into eggs. His arriving home from a trip to Japan with red, blue, and yellow kimonos for my sisters and me. His taking us to pick out a Christmas tree each year. These memories had suddenly become tweaked and clouded, sideswiped by the thoughts of the women he was with on the Japanese vacation with his buddy, who was also cheating on his wife. And a few months back, when he and my sister came home from picking out the Christmas tree, and she, not understanding that it was a secret, said, "Brenda got the good one," my mom's head jerking toward him, her face hot with anger. Already, I had grown used to my father's absence. My mother still drove me to kindergarten, the Little Friends Learning Center, in the mornings. When she picked me up in the afternoon, she still wore her jogging clothes, and we still sang along to Lionel Richie's "All Night Long" and Laura Branigan's "Gloria" on our way to pick up my sisters from dance lessons. The only time I had counted on seeing my father was before he left for work in the mornings. After he brushed his teeth with baking soda and shaved his face, stuck a piece of tissue on the spot on his chin where he constantly cut himself, he tied his tie and grabbed his briefcase. I'd stand in the living room crying and say, "Please don't leave me," over and over. He'd throw me up to the skylight and catch me, then give me a kiss and walk out the door. In the condo, I lathered my 5-year-old legs with Nair hair removal cream and glided my sister's razor up the front of my shins. I knew what women were supposed to look like. I was used to seeing naked ladies, their shapes embellished in the molds of ice cube trays my father kept in the freezer, their silhouettes knitted into his black winter hat to make their own white space, their blank faces and prominent breasts hugging his head. During the year my father lived at the condo, we arrived to find notes trailing from the front door and into the living room, through the hallway and up the stairs to the bedroom, finally reaching his bed. I sounded out the repetitious lines, "For my lover" and "From your lover," that began and ended each vignette, individual notes taped neatly around pieces of uneaten chocolate. We picked them up, but didn't unfold the paper to see the messages inside. And he laughed as we gathered them together, piling them on the desk in his bedroom. We knew then that we would be moved out as Brenda moved in, our roles in his life diminishing, our important jobs of holding wallet, money clip, and keys in our small purses obsolete. She'd be the one going for 4-wheel drives in the woods with him, taking trips to the dump with garbage bags covering the windshield while he stuck his head outside the driver's side window to see the road. She'd go sailing with him, and when the boat tipped over, she wouldn't be the one caught underneath the sail, gasping for air, terrified that no one would find her to pull her up. We, who had not yet grown into women, would be left behind. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. I loved just the detail, like the play by play, very slow motion, like popping of the skin and the detail there. I'm wondering, do you is this throughout the book? Like, are there a lot of very detail driven scenes? How does that play into your work?
That's a good question. There are pretty detailed scenes throughout the book. I mean, this is one of the earliest scenes from the narrator age-wise. So it's a little more written through that lens of the 5-year-old than other parts, but there's certainly some pretty vivid scenes, yeah, throughout.
I love
Thank
how
you.
it's used there to really access that 5-year-old voice and that, yeah, really, really.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Troy, do you have anything to add?
Well, yes, Gina, I actually ordered your book while you were reading for us at Stonehouse Readers. And I've said, it is. I like what Jenny said about the pace. It is a slow, poignant burn, and I go through it. I am about halfway through, not because it's not interesting, but because it brings up so much of my own wounds, my own step family memories, and it is written in such detail, with such precision and such authentic honesty. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll have you back at Stonehouse. And maybe next year if you publish another book. Oh, everyone. Hi, I'm again Troy Myers. I'm a graduate of Stonecoast MFA. This is the annual on my book release reading hosted by the Stonecoast program. I have the honor to introduce Joanna Solfrian. I have not read her poems. I'm excited to hear her work tonight. Joanna Solfrian is the author of Visible Heavens, which was chosen by Naomi Shihab Nye for a WIC First Book Poetry Prize. Her second collection, The Mud Room, was published by Mad Hat Press in 2020. In 2021, she published a chapbook, The Second Perfect Number, with Finishing Line Press. She lives and works in New York City. Hey, Joanna, it's really a pleasure to meet you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Call me Joe.
Okay.
But it's nice to meet you and nice to
Well,
see some old friends.
great.
So the second perfect number is a chapbook as a journal. Every February I write a poem a day with a group of friends. We picked February because it's the shortest month, and it's sort of a brutal but very fruitful daily practice. It sort of gets you out of your tendencies and your fallback skills, and it helps you fracture things. And a recent February, I just decided to write in the same form for the entire month. They are all in the Huzzle form. Some people pronounce it guzzle, and that is it's an ancient Persian form of couplets. And on the page, every single one is a couplet. The idea being that they're sort of like pearls on a strand, so that each couplet retains its individual pearlness, and it's a thing in and of itself. But when you string them all together, it makes, of course, a gestalt that's something more. So I just mentioned that because not everybody's familiar with the form, and because of those discrete couplets, they can seem more leaping and disjointed than other, maybe some more narrative forms. And I just wanted to say that it's okay if you listen and you're like, I don't know what's going on, or I don't know, like, just if you can turn that part of your brain off, the sort of the intellectualizing what's happening part of your brain, and just, listen and feel is probably the best way to listen to puzzles. So this is the poem from February 3rd. It is called A Mighty Fortress. Last night we lit our eyes, and our lips became moons from the gaze. The wine bottle envied how you decanted into me. Sundays too, I used to be at church, an amateur lover, hunting God in the wine that trembled in the thimble glasses. The cat is curled at my hip. His griefs do not measure the same as mine, and our relationship is somewhat formal. Some thoughts electrocute, like sleep to the insomniac. Buried in these words are instructions for weeping. If I die early, you insist you won't remarry. Do, as it is, the newspapers tell of too much sorrow. And here's one, the one from February 9th. I also wanted to write a book that sort of honored the experience of like a working mother, poet, spouse, you know, and what happens in an entire month. So I think this was a stressed out kid birthday party day. On rereading Christian Wyman's My Bright Abyss, Meditation of a Modern Believer. Saturday, sleepovers, birthday party, paper-plated pizza slices, the moronic sorority of mothers in a clutch. I judge too much, lob pyrotechnics from my brain, and then self-flagellate with the nearest pool noodle. I don't want heaven to be elsewhere, all healing. I want to die into life so that I can repair my relationship with paper plates. Quantum weirdness. The unobserved particle goes through multiple screen holes, while the observed, only one. What I observe of mothers, parties, the cat now grooming its anus, is altered by my means of perception. This feels like bad news. Yes, all religion is an attempt to comprehend the numinous. Careful, Joe. As your pen drains, so does the divine. This one has a blank in it, and I don't know how to reference that. So I'm just going to make like a little line for the blank that I know my sister, who is, I think, listening and participates in the National Crossword Puzzle Tournament every year, as does my cousin. They will understand how to fill in the blank instantly, as will many of you. Yeah, so this is about my dad. Pop's Independence Day. I remember you in your final atonement, how calm you were. Though you couldn't tell me, you understood the names hidden in the dusk. I wish I could have given you my arms so that you'd have recognized a tether to earth. But in your stupor, you needed to forget things. I wonder sometimes about the work of your eyes. What did they see in the ceiling that made the nurse clutch her breast? You felt no injury over the climateless beeps and drips. I do the crossword by your side. Her aspera odd. Then out the plate glass window, mute, fireworks. And for 2, maybe 3 seconds, they drape the sky with jewels. As a human, you were nearly blameless. You won't let go of the bouquet I picked from the courtyard until it is time to let go. One of my many jobs has been to teach math, and the second perfect number is actually a mathematic term that really only the most nerdy have tried to figure out. But this is called the reflexive property, which if you remember your geometry, which, you know, okay, whatever, most people remember substitution, but the reflexive property is A equals A, which I had a student say to me once, that should be called the no shit property. So A equals A is the reflexive property, and you'll see how it figures in this poem. This was from February 23rd. You are mine as much as anyone can be mine. Every time I see you, my thoughts arrest. Your solitude is my solitude. This is why there's so much joy. Whatever song I've buried waits for you to tread kindly by. On the page, I hoard the moon. No shit, I'm a fool. I make my mother boast when I spy you sleeping. Aw, that elbow, I grew that. The you is anyone who wants it. Skin is a shield for blood, bone not identity. And the last one I will read is from February 26th. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that one. February 26th. When I place my feet on the floor, all sense of you condenses into a pebble, which I spend the rest of my day waking. Excuse me, let me start over. Waking from a dream. When I place my feet on the floor, all sense of you condenses into a pebble, which I spend the rest of my day looking for. There is another kind of waiting, which happens in the room deep inside your own being, the one with dust on its chair. The sea gave up its idea of mirrors long ago, and we're supposed to know something of the stars, their corridors. This is all very melancholy because I am melancholy. Because I am melancholy, that is what I think of this. When death endeavors to doom, I run topless through a cornfield. The cob stares me down with many eyes, and I laugh. Thank you.
I feel like I should not call you by your first name. Those poems are so great. Trembled in the thimble glasses. Moronic sorority of mothers in a clutch. That is brilliant.
Thank you.
And I appreciated the moment you approached the numinous or talked about religious experience. Is that something throughout your poems or?
Oh yeah, my father was a Protestant minister, so that was every Sunday of my sisters in my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely ordering your book, at least your books, if not more than one. Last thing I'll say is that all sense of you condenses into a pebble. Felt like John Donne, man. That was some serious game. Thank you so much for sharing.
If that's as close as I get to Donne, which is many leagues away, I'll take it. Thank you. He's wonderful.
Well, I hope we get to talk again. I want to read more of your poems. Thank you so much for coming on. Jenny, what's your reaction?
Yeah, Joe, thank you so much. I was lucky enough to get to hear you read last year as well, and it's so cool to just hear the continuation. I really loved the use of the mundane too, like the self-flagellating with a pool noodle, the cat licking its anus. Like there was some really hilarious humor right up against some really beautiful spiritual meaning, and it was all such a cool experience. Thank you so much. Lovely. Well, our next reader is Clifford Royal Johns. Clifford builds furniture and writes novels, short stories, memoir, and humor. He has 2 novels out, Walking Shadow and Velocity Blues, which we'll hear from tonight. His shorter written work can be found in Crossed Genres, Shimmer, and many other magazines and anthologies. His furniture can be found in his house. Welcome, Cliff. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jenny. So I'm going to read from Velocity Blues this time, which is, whoops, wow. Huh. Not what I expected. Anyway, this is a book, it's science fiction near term, which is based on a idea that there's a genetic experiment or a genetic process to make your kids very healthy and smart and all that, and it doesn't work quite the way they expect it to because they don't wait long enough to see what the result is. And so this has been in some cases thought of as a YA novel because the protagonist is 16 or so. But on the other hand, it's also thought of as a adult novel too. So I don't think the publisher really decided which it should be. So I'm going to read from that, and I'm going to read from the beginning of that. At 1:30 in the morning, my boss called me into work. I ran across the rooftops toward his office, leaping across alleys, tumbling, sprinting, and dodging around ventilation plenums and standpipes, as I usually did, hoping he had a job for me. but suspecting that he planned to fire me because I was such an unreliable courier. All around me, delivery drones flew out of their holes, buzzing like cicadas, bobbing around obstructions, dodging each other, darting low over roofs, then floating down among the buildings to leave packages and secure drop boxes. That was usually my job too, delivery drone, except I was human, more or less, and I couldn't fly. I worked for Kegel, doing odd jobs that required lots of energy, but not much focus or concentration. Kegel was a low-end hooligan with delusions of mediocrity who got lucky a few times and built up a small business. He paid me enough to cover my rent, but not quite enough for sufficient food. Admittedly, I ate a lot. I passed security on the first floor of Kegel's building, then danced backwards up the stairs. Instead of firing me, Kegel handed me a box about the size of a pound of butter. The box felt cool and a little moist with condensation. It was light brown on one side, fading to green on the other, and speckled with dark spots like a slab of dead trout. Kegel talked while I danced, wiggled, played finger games. He was used to his energy employees constantly fidgeting, but he sighed with disgusted irritation anyway. I was young, frenetic, and unfocused, even for energy. Go to the castle wheel, he said. Find an E-woman dressed in green, wearing a stainless steel bolt to the top of each ear, and a brass-colored tattoo of a Phillips screw on each side of her neck. Give her the box, then return immediately. He paused. Take it directly to the castle wheel zip. Give it to Bolt. Don't mess around. Don't get distracted. Don't take the long way. Directly there, directly back. Understand? I had trouble listening to such long sentences spoken by a regular person. A slug, as we call them, as in sluggish and slow. The slack time between his words seemed long enough for a whole conversation for an E like me. So while he talked, I thought about trout-flavored ice cream, about how a fudge-coated ice cream sandwich, maybe not trout-flavored, would taste mighty fine right then. About fishing with my mother. I caught 3 lake trout in one day when I was 10, back when I was Zane, back when I was gifted. By the time I had fully transitioned to E at 16, I had chosen to call myself Zip. The name fit me. Nodding vigorously to show I understood Kegel's directions, I imagined stopping by to see Bang on my way to Castle Wheel. Her place wasn't really on the way, but I figured I'd have time. Grilled trout tasted good, but all the food I paid for had to be high-calorie, vitamin-rich, and cheap. I was an E, energy that is, running and eating in my life. When Kegel appeared to be done talking, I strapped the package to my back, sped down the stairs and out of the building. Running full speed was love and cheeseburgers. When I got to the go-go cleaners, I leapt onto a moving boxer delivery van, reached a ledge, and swung up onto the roof, then raced on, keeping my mind occupied with timing my cross-alley leaps while avoiding smog filters, air conditioning units, roof gardens, and solar panels. At the end of the block, there were no delivery bugs in the air, so I dove a sweet rotating gainer toward the roof across the wide alley. When I landed rooftop on the other side, I automatically turned toward Bang, but angled back after a few blocks. Castle Wheels, Castle Wheel. I repeated my destination every time I landed after flip, Castle Wheel. I needed to flip as I jumped. I didn't need to flip as I jumped, but it suited me to fly through the air, seeing the world whirl, tasting the air, hearing the echoes come and go with the rotation. Woman in green, Castle Wheel. The Castle Wheel was a gathering place for energy, people like me who could no longer stand still long enough to hold a real conversation or a real job. We weren't born that way, we were mistakes. Our parents paid a lot of money for genetic modification to make their children brilliant and calm, energetic and strong. A gifted kid program. But the designers hadn't wanted to wait 20 years to see how adulthood would play out. When the first energy started having problems, the designers stopped the program, but by then there were many thousands of gifted kids spread across 15 years. After a bit of rain, running the roofs at night tasted of pennies, spring, smog grit, and independence. although the independence part was invariably short-lived. Wary of dangers like damaged roofs, E-traps placed to trip, hurt, or even kill energy, and other full-speed worries, I scanned for the goal of the castle wheel as I ran. Finally, the neon wheel appeared on the street below, glowing like ever. I was a minute or so late, but within what I considered acceptable parameters for a courier job. I swatted away the tube-carrying delivery bug, then flipped 2 stories to the ground, landing with an easy give in my ankles, knees, hips, softly as a falling mouse hair. Guiding neon model of the door hung over the entrance of Castle Wheel, announcing the club's presence. It cast a sepia wash on the wood door and on the gatekeeper, making them both sphere interplated. The sign buzzed like a short circuit and smelled faintly of ozone. When the door finally rolled open, the confused noise and shifting mass of color flowed out onto the street like a swirling eddy and drew me in. Energy lived at a higher speed than slugs, which is why slugs are often referred to as fleeting, as in skittish, jumpy, and old. When energy gathered, though, our world felt smooth, graceful, and natural, like a slug world does today. So when I bounced through the doorway and into the allegro fourth-step music and the colorful blur of energy dancing, the scene was comfortable and homely. Strobe flashed every second, revealing everyone in their apparent quiescent state, and leaving behind an afterimage of dancers in mid-twirl or spin. First glance didn't show my woman in green with the bolt. There were 47 screens arrayed around the room, each showing a different subtitled channel. And since none of the programs were geared for E, the programs were slow enough to watch all 47 and not miss anything if you worked fast. I thought about the smoothness and flavor that E added to biryani and their masala sauce, and thought about California's seduction. The enormous exhaustion mounted above the dancers seemed to draw people and attention into the dance. It pulled cool air in through the small ducts all over the round building, creating a wild whirl of wind that cooled the E on the floor. Every so often, the wheel sprayed water into the air, sending the chilling mist gusting through the room to prevent us from overheating with the dance. Package, the lingering raspy as
Hey, Cliff. I'm sorry, we can't, it got muffled. Your microphone maybe got muffled for a sec. Could we start that part again? That's better, thank you.
I punched in my order for a car burst trip, then palmed the reader and turned around, waiting for the next strobe flash. A second is a long time. A man on my left hopped into the air and started a spin. Another grabbed a swing bar and began a reverse flip to one of the dancing platforms. The entry door finally finished rolling closed, sealing in the noise and flickering light. The flash popped again, and there she was, dressed in a green dance outfit with stainless bolts, just as Kegel had said. The bolt flashed loose, relaxed, her arms flung up, and her fingertips touching like a ballet dancer's. Her loose skirt bunched up on her legs and flared out a bit. She was long and tall and put together nicely for an E. She appeared to be falling. My power burst drink rose up through the bar. I grabbed it and gulped it down, then strolled nonchalantly, at least as nonchalantly as an E can stroll, over to where I'd last seen her. I danced a short regression to a stop. The next flash freeze-framed several people staring down at her. Even in the crowded shadows, shaded from most of the flashing, fluctuating light, Bolt's body glowed green. She lay on the floor, not moving at all, completely still. E are never still if they're awake and alive. Bolt had short hair like most energy, and her ear bolts were glinting, polished, an attractive accent. The stunning emerald of her embossed dancing outfit, however, was marred by a 2-centimeter glossy black circle under her left breast. In the lingering light from the flash, 8 legs from a small round flea sapper blossomed out, spider-like, then stabbed into her chest. She spasmed once, arched her back as though shocked with defibrillator paddles, then relaxed again. She was energy when she hit the floor, but she'd be a slug if she ever stood up again. I should have dashed to the door, but like everyone else who saw her fall, I stood transfixed, astonished by the simple, intimate brutality of the flea sapper. The person who sapped her couldn't be far away, but I stared at the motionless body until the next flash came and showed the spider pattern of the flea sapper more clearly. The flash also delineated a man with a gun kneeling beside her. He was short and square and had a shaved head, but he was energy like me. He wore a brown jacket and his white shoes glowed with an afterimage of the flash. His gun was pointed at my chest. I think I'll stop there.
Stopping on a cliffhanger. Thank you. Cliff, I was struck just with the speed. I mean, it's called velocity blues, but like the speed in your language, there's so much frenetic energy in these pages, kind of that, you know, I read in the description of the book as well. Is there something that, I guess, what inspired you to use speed? You know, use this like energy and the slug, like did that come from somewhere, or did it just kind of start when you started writing it? Like, how did you think of that idea?
Actually, I guess I was watching the Naruto anime, and Naruto characters in anime a lot tend to run through the trees, not on the ground, but up in the trees. And I sort of translated that, but mostly it started with a fast thought process, and then it just felt natural to have a fast physical process as well to go with it.
Yeah,
and scattered as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the way your language supports that speed is super interesting.
Thanks.
Yeah. Troy, any thoughts?
Hey, Cliff, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I don't know anything about anime much, or not as much sci-fi as I'd like to know, but I have a question. So would you consider this an AI novel? This is a really amateur ask. What are the e-beings? I don't know.
They're just genetically modified people.
Okay.
So they were part of a program where if you paid enough money, of course, you could have your kid spruced up. But they didn't test it long enough, so they didn't realize how it would affect them later by making them too spruced up in terms of physical activity and mental wildness, and just unable to focus on anything long enough to do anything useful.
That is a fascinating.
When they're children, they're at genius level in pretty much anything they decide to approach.
Thank you so much. That helps me quite a bit.
Okay.
A little bit of echoes of Harrison Bergeron, which is one story I read. I think that might be Bradbury, a superhuman man. I like the title. I'll check it out. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thanks.
You bet. Hey, everybody. I'm Troy Myers of the Stonecoast MFA in Creative Writing. This is our annual alumni book release reading, and I have the pleasure of introducing Indigo Moor. Indigo is probably perhaps the first Stonecoast person I actually saw in person, so that's one honor that I like to recall. Indigo is the poet laureate emeritus of Sacramento, and his fourth book of poetry, Everybody's Jonesin for Something, took second place in the University of Nebraska Press's Backwater Prize. His second book, Through the Stonecutter's Window, won Northwestern University Press's Cobb Econom Prize. First and third books, Taproot and In the Room of Thirsts and Hungers, both published by Main Street Rag. Indigo, welcome back. It's good to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's been such a strange day where everything was going wrong, and then it solidified right as I got on air. So I'm hoping that, you know, that I don't wind up that I'm in a coma or something and dreaming all this. I want to read two pieces. Hey, you got to think that way sometimes. I want to read two pieces from my latest book, Everybody's Jonesin, for something, because I've been working on my memoir. And these two pieces, they force me to remember all the things that I don't necessarily want to remember about myself, which is pretty much what a memoir is. Lost in the World Machine. I was going to North Carolina State, and I was working probably the second most horrible job I've ever had in my life at a steel refinery. And what we did is we took steel from places that have been collapsed and we got the rust off of it. And it was a horrible job and a horrible time. Lost in the World Machine. I'm 17 and Black, nimble as Jack, jumping I-beams like candles. An air hose hisses like Medusa's head tied to my wrist. This refining machine performs the alchemy to turn rusted steel virginal again, but it's stinging me to death. Gray hot pellets jet from tiny holes like blackstrap horseflies, cutting away the oxidation. Like the foreman's gaze, they always find the tender flesh. I'm summer college fodder, working shit jobs before humping a train back to Raleigh. The welders' first sparks of the day always make me flinch. Dust-laden smoke circles the rafters. Ropey chains hang like man-o'-war tendrils, like a trembling curtain of almost lynchings. I'm a harlequin, playing cards with someone else's deck. I know as much about refining steel as I do about studying textbooks. I'm hard-tracked to do both or neither, until pressure geysers out my brain, until I roll snake eyes with the future. Maybe if I throw myself into this machine, I could save my feet this tortured road. A crosstown bus pass digs deep into minimum wage. An old lady shuffles after my bus as it pulls from the curb. I don't reach the pull cord in time to give her a fighting chance. Or, like my absentee father might say, maybe I just didn't try hard enough. And the next piece I want to read, it started off as a memoir piece, and I think those of you who write it or write CNF understand how quickly that can transform into a CNF piece till you don't even recognize anything in it. So it won't end up in a memoir. Guardians. Grandpa Daniel was in his late 70s, yet still spry enough to climb the tree in our backyard for figs. He insisted that the only man ever born worth his salt was Martin Luther King Jr. I'd take a bullet for that man, yes I would, he said, raining figs down upon his grandson Michael, who raced around the tree beneath his grandpa's scrawny legs poking out of Bermuda shorts. Michael balanced a large wicker basket on his head, always a foot away from where the figs hit. When they shot the Reverend King, Grandpa Daniel was true to his word. He lay down on his bed, deciding this was the bullet meant for him. Soon, he told his daughter-in-law, Carolyn, the good Reverend will wake up and I will be a hero. But days later, Grandpa Daniel was still alive and the Reverend was still very much dead. No less true to his word than he was before the announcement of the funeral, Grandpa decided that God hadn't switched him and the Reverend because Grandpa hadn't proven how serious he was. So Daniel, who had survived 7 sit-ins, 6 police dog attacks, and 4 hosing downs with water he claimed was colder than Alaskan ice, dug a shallow grave in the backyard. He donned his second best dress suit, his best, he reasoned, he would wear at his funeral, and he lay down in the grave. That night, it rained. Caroline, who had promised her late husband that she would look after his dad, put an umbrella over the head of the ditch. From his bedroom window, Michael could see his grandpa's feet sticking out from under his gray half dome of a promise, his wool pants sticking to his legs. On the day of the funeral, Caroline turned the volume of the old Zenith up loud enough to shake the windows. Really, she was turning it up loud enough to wake the not dead. After a few minutes, the screen door creaked open and Grandpa shuffled in. His back was caked with mud, but Caroline didn't complain when he sat down on the couch between her and Michael. When they showed a close-up of King's face, still as dead as Grandpa was not, Daniel took first Michael's hand and then Caroline's. He was crying. "I'm sorry," he said, "I'm sorry. I did everything I could." But he wasn't talking to his grandson or his daughter-in-law. He was looking at the TV. He was apologizing to everyone behind the glass. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Indigo.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you for listening to me.
of course. So wonderful to hear any reflection on MLK. And the story with your grandfather is just beautiful.
Well, thank you. It was a lie. You understand that, right? Which is why I can't use it in my memoir. But sometimes when you're working on a memoir and you're working on a story that's partially true,
Yeah.
keep circling to things that are almost true. And it should have been true had it not been there. And yeah, these things stick.
Well, that works for me.
Well, thank you.
Much. Jenny, do you have reactions?
Oh yeah, Indigo, that was stunning. I always love hearing you read. I've heard you read a couple times, and I am just always struck by the physical detail that you use, like the mud on the back, that you really like bring us in there. And I, as somebody who writes nonfiction, it's a beautiful reminder of how language can really like narrow it down to a moment. And yeah, I think poetry does that so well, like to bring us into the feeling of a moment.
It does. And as long as you don't overdo it, it can be a beautiful thing to have. Yes. If you'd seen the first version of it, you'd be watching your watch as I was reading.
Well, I certainly wasn't that time. I was like waiting for you to keep going because yeah, thank you so much. That was stunning. Yeah. Our final reader tonight is Adrian S Walner. Adrienne's debut poetry collection, To the 4 a.m. Light, was published by Finishing Line Press in March 2021. She has worked as youth advocate, adjunct professor, wilderness instructor, editor, national park ranger, marketing specialist, and grant writer. Adrienne lives and writes in the North Woods of Wisconsin. Adrienne, thank you for joining us. We're so lucky to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad I could be here with everyone. And these have just been wonderful readings. So thank you all for being here tonight and for sharing your work. It's really been great. I've really enjoyed it. All right, I'm going to read from To the 4 a.m. Light, and I am going to start with the title poem for the book. To the 4 a.m. Light. When I opened my eyes, you were unexpected. You, a shimmering white square draped over the edge of the bed beside my akimbo limbs and muted motion. A slumber-logged body, unaware and unprepared for such a bright, defined light. The only barrier between us, the shadow of my comforter. a feather and warmth wall separating your surprise from my thighs. I assume the moon is huge, full, determined. It is the only way you could have cut through the deep November night framed in my bedroom skylight. You, 4 a.m. light, brazen, bold, and bright, drifting through the darkness to my bedside. In my sleep stupor, I did not know where you had come from, only that you had come, and would not leave until morning shoved you over the edge of the roof. I closed my eyes and imagined you beneath the covers, lighting the places in me too dark for anyone else to see. Thank you. And this I actually worked on at Stonecoast. This is called Never Fell. Never fell. Last night I was Eve. I wore spike-heeled, snake-skinned boots. My hair was short. I was not the Lady Godiva Eve, painted by so many ribs, long, blonde, and naked. My hair was red. My legs were long, and my tongue was longer. Born by the piercing, the consecration of metal to flesh, of skin to skin. I was forced from muscle, swelled out of blood, tendons, and twisting tissue. No bone bore me. I walked into this world. I did not fall. I made an entrance. What shame should make me want to hide the soft glow of my bare, buttery skin? Should you not look on me and see the beauty that is creation? I will feed this hungry body. I will lubricate my eager spirit. I will not live on a diet of deprivation when the fruit is bulging from the branches, swollen with juice and tender meat. I will devour what tries to devour me. You will know me by my outstretched hand. And I'm going to read 2 more. I know we're running short on time here. It's hard to fit 5 people into an hour. So I'm gonna read 2 more here. Disquiet. Solar storms and stomach aches, feeding anxiety, encouraging mistakes, drawing anger out, shoveling worry in. Every night's sleep seems to wake as soon as it begins. Drenched in sweat, I am boiled awake, hours away from a lucid state. My eyes snap open, I hurl my covers aside and fumble for my phone to check the time. The unnatural blaze of cellular light that we now completely accept as just part of our life informs me that it's 3 in the morning. Why the fuck am I awake? As usual, checking the phone was a mistake. The luminescent rabbit hole that tempts to trivial and text as we numbly type and swipe to the next and the next. I didn't have to look. What difference did it make? I still wish I was sleeping and I'm still awake. But these days, who still lies still in sleeplessness's dark embrace? Who doesn't reach for their personal distraction database? How have we arrived in this place where our eyes thirst for screens and our hands are constantly occupied by gleaming machines? This desire for answers sooner than instantly, before immediately, and quicker than now has left us less able to comprehend somehow that our addiction to knowing is not as intelligent as it seems, as ideas give way to updates and devices replace dreams. Thank you. And I'm going to end with the last poem in the book, which is called Clarity.
May I ask, could you read more before the last one? Because I want to make sure you get your time.
Sure. I know everybody's got,
you haven't seen the chat.
So,
everybody in the chat is saying read more. So I just thought I would jump in and say what everybody else is
Thank
saying.
You.
Yeah,
Thank
Adrian,
you.
we
Thank
have
you
until 8:30, so take your time, please. Go for it.
All right. Okay. I guess I'll read two more maybe. I like to end with clarity, so I'm going to read I'm going to read one that has to do with the season that we're in right now. So I know some of you are coming from places that have a whole bunch of snow, like where I am in Wisconsin right now. But since we're all virtual, we don't have to do what I'm about to read a poem about. So it's called Driving North. So I'm glad that nobody hopefully needs to get in their car and drive in a snowstorm after this. The snow surrounds me like a static black hole, swallowing me as I knuckle the steering wheel. The challenge of keeping my tires in the vanishing tracks ahead puckers my body to the windshield like an old woman, ever crooked forward to get a better look at everything. I veer over the tapering wedge of snow that threads the median and feel a skitter beneath me as my tires lose track. I grip the wheel and mutter comfort to myself as I coax my 1,800-pound battering ram from the brink of icy misfortune and back into the caving tracks. Easy now, you've got this. I train my eyes to the edge of the headlight's sphere and watch the white road rush toward me, barely able to distinguish which track is passable and which has deepened. I turn on my high beams. The snow explodes before me, trajectory of each flake exposed in the glare, flashing like out-of-control bullets, miniature white rockets, swarms of angry Arctic fireflies. I switch back to low beams and focus on my course. I cannot tell how far I have gone or have yet to go to reach my next turn. The night teems with white, changing the perception of darkness, canceling out depth of field, and making adjustment to night vision impossible. Not that there would be much to see, even if I could, but for once, I'm not worried about deer on the road. I know they are smart enough to stay home on a night like this. I open my fists one at a time, extending fingers clenched so tight to the wheel, each joint feels like hardened balls of granulated glue, frozen pine sap, coagulated molasses. I roll my head side to side and stretch my neck. Hours of attention through tension gather at the summit of my spine and reach around my skull, encasing my eyeballs in a dry, papery ache. I cannot think of anything but snow, and yet I cannot think about it at all. Each time I think about the driving snow and not the act of driving in the snow, I swerve ever so slightly from my path and battle the untrekked swaths of snow that billow and growl, low, loud moans of rubber skidding over ice beneath me. Each groan punctures my confidence. Come on now, stay focused, I scold. I catch a glimpse with my radio clock, 2:06 a.m. The only other people on the road at this hour are leaving a bar. Great, just what I need. Some asshole to swerve up the tracks I blindly follow and lead me into a ditch. I concentrate on my objective. The thought of the cabin soothes my nerves. It's always better to wake up there, even if it takes twice as long to arrive. I turn down the heat and invite the cold air to awaken my senses. The road looks less like snow-covered ruins and more like trampled cake frosting, smashed, mashed potato plaster, unfurled frozen bed sheets. I have come to the threshold of the last town to pass through before I reach my destination. I relish the few miles of compacted county plowed snow as I accelerate close to the actual speed limit, then hunker down for the next 30 miles of unplowed wilderness. Thank you. And I'm going to end with, as I said before, Clarity, the last poem in the book. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And it's just been so great to be here with you all. Clarity. I am building a sacred space within my heart, building a space inside my own mind to be free and place my energy into creation and light. I am building a sacred place. Sometimes I struggle and suffer and sabotage. Sometimes this cavernous yearn for filmless challenges. Yet I continue to smile and exist and believe that something good is there, that all things are truly possible if I can withstand the judgment of my own mind against myself. I am building a sacred place within my heart. I have the power, if I so choose to exercise, to let myself be happy while continuing within the discomfort and discouragement of the challenges of living toward it. I am building a space inside my own mind to be free. It is difficult at times to stand up to the negativity and doubt brought on often by those who do not strive, but even by those to whom I am the closest, that I love the most. But it is I who allows myself to be deflated from joy from these carefully doubting elements. I am building a space to place my energy in creation and life. How do I begin to achieve and realize without the ability to see what I desire exist? If I do not allow myself to dream or believe in what I seek, how will I ever find it? I must recognize, respect my own passion, and seek and follow and pioneer my path. This is instrumental in happiness, joy, contentment, and fulfillment. Visualize, intention, believe, build, arrive. I am building. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrienne. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing your words tonight. I'm glad you read that extra poem. It was delightful. I am struck by place in your writing and just how, I mean, these sacred spaces that are sacred to you, and it's in your bio of all the time that you've spent outdoors and connected to place, and I love that about you. I am curious, what specifically, there are many ways to write to place and to write about place, and I'm wondering if there is a specific I don't know, message or way that your book is pushing toward place. This to the 4 a.m. light. Yeah, how does place function in that book for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things that I really enjoy about poetry is, or art in general, is being able to be put in a moment and a place, and just to experience not necessarily, all sorts of other things around it, but just what's happening here, what's happening in the now, in the moment. So I thank you for, seeing some of that in my work. And I guess I spend a lot of time in the outdoors, like you said. So that definitely shows up in here. And I spend a lot of time writing outside. So for me, writing about place is reaching into the senses and just really trying to honor the moment when I can, and honor the specialness of each place where I spend time.
I love that.
I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, totally. Thank you. Yeah, really wonderful. Troy, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you for reading, Adrienne. You read for us at Stonehouse, and it's great to see you again. I'm glad you have the poem about the cell phones, the unnatural glaze of cellular light. Oh my God, that was good to hear that. Called out. And when that was contrasted with,
Yes.
I live in the mountains, used to drive different in the snow myself, contrasted with that natural imagery of the snow falling. And I know how it is. You got to go fast going up, slow going down. I loved it. I'm like, get rid of my phone. Let me go drive in the snow. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. Well, let's have one huge round of applause for our readers tonight. Thank you all so much. Just really, really wonderful work. It's so cool to see and hear the depth of everyone's work and how different you all are from each other. It's so wonderful to just hear all your voices in the same room. So thank you. I do want to turn it over to Kelly for a moment to let us know. Kelly is our official bookseller for the Stonecoast alumni readings, and she has all of these books ready to order. So Kelly, can you tell us how to do that?
Well, here they all are, and including the ones from last week. I do have copies here at my house where, I keep everything that is Stonecoast related. And you can order them in one of two ways. You can just go on my website and it says, are you looking for a book? And if you say, yes, I'm looking for Gina's book, just type in that that's what you're looking for, and the email comes directly to me. And then I get in touch with you to get your address and all that stuff. And, you know, I can invoice you. I can give you a call, get your credit card number. We can do it. If you're local, I'll just come over to your house, bring you the book. So that's the easy way to do it, because the books, I have them here. Another
What
way.
is your website?
Huh?
What is your website?
My website is kellysbookstogo.com.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't know that. No.
I'm old enough to get things. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My email address is kellysbookstogo@gmail.com. But if you go to my website, you can order directly through there. Or if you go to my website, you can also go down to my bookshop link, which is at the very bottom of my website. You click on that, and there is a list under Stonecoast Alumni December 2021 readings. And you can click on the books and they go right to you from bookshop. And yes, I do get commission for that also. It's just as easy to contact with me though, because I'll media mail them out for free right directly from my house. Okay. You can always give me a call, 207-318-0008. I'd love to talk to you. It's always so exciting to even see all of you. And I'm so excited that a good many of you are going to be here in January to do some work at the residency in January. And I guarantee you copies of all your books will be on the alumni table. Our alumni have been very, very prolific during the lockdown. There are so many new books that it's going to be great to display them all out on my table. So I'm so glad to see you all as usual. And I hope to hear from you.
Thank you, Kelly. So great to have you selling these books. Congratulations once again to all of our 2021 alumni authors. We're just really proud of you. We're just so excited that your work is out in the world, and we're really grateful to get to hear it all in these sessions. So thank you to our readers, both from tonight and from last session. I'm going to turn off the recording now. And give everyone a moment to say hello if you'd like to. We can kind of trickle out, but thank you for capping off our 2021 program in such a beautiful way. And thanks to Troy for co-hosting. Troy, thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. It's been an honor, truly.
All right, we'll see you back next year.